All right. So yeah, I got both. Okay, we're good. All righty. Okay, I'll go ahead and get us started. It is 12:30, and this is of course week 3, where I started counting at 0. This is actually the 4th week, but I decided to start at week 0 if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, this is the 14th, and what you're seeing right here right now is some of my stuff I've got. So let me take the settings and change it to a student view so I don't confuse you. I don't want to do that. There's one thing I want to get for us today. Let me go over to files. And is it? No. We're good. Today we're gonna get a student view. So today what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at Lunch's database 3. We've done 1 and 2, and I can't remember if we've done 3. Let me check the syllabus real quickly and see if we've but I think we've done 1 and 2, but we haven't done 3. So we're gonna work on it today. And pop out a student view for a minute. I can take a gander and see for sure. But that I think we're going to try and do 3 and 4 because we've done 2. And let me look here for just a sec, because I can tell you if we've got any uploads over there in F3. And if we do, then we can move on. See if we've got anybody that's. Yep. Okay. Good. We can start on 4 then. Okay. And now, huh? That's okay. That's all right. Let me pop over here and say, okay. You did it early. Okay. Well, yeah. we'll do 3 today. I'm good. And I thought we were either at 3 or 4. Pop this over here. And we'll go over to the modules, and then let me go to settings and get myself into a student view so you see the same thing I did. So we're going to work on number 3 today, and this is chapter 3 over in the Patrick text, the SQL materials. And as I said before, basically we're just we're working through these different types of queries, and we add little. He adds a little nuance here or there as it starts to get as we move through the chapter. And what he will do is, again, this is like we'll talk about, for example, again, he'll give us some of the background a little bit where he's talking about the compound condition, okay, and then at the very bottom of page 86, for example, he gives us an example. And then he shows us at the top of 87 a beginning table, and then there in the middle of page 87 a result table. And then he'll give us some notes, and those notes will give you some explanations, maybe where SQL and Access and SQL and Oracle might differ a little bit. But basically, what we're doing now is we're working with clauses, and then we'll start at a certain point. We'll start where we begin to combine tables, but we're still really in the extraction mode. So to go over, so let's do this. Click on the files, okay, and we'll go over here and we'll find the Patrick materials, okay, and it's pretty much the algorithms, what it is, and then download that Patrick materials zip file. Okay, and I'm going to diminish mine. Now, everybody, I assume, knows now how to log in to get to the VMware and get access and all that business. So what I'm going to do is I just take this, I throw it on the desktop, and then the SQL fund. Now, I use the same database over and over for a very simple reason. We've talked about data warehouse concept. I'm going to open it up now. Okay, question? Okay. Okay. The user is the station name and then blank. you may have to try to use a different machine there. I'm not sure what might have happened. Huh? You tried 2 of them? Well, try a third, see what you can find out. Were they already up and running? Yeah, probably somebody was in there and used them, and you may have to boot back down. So that's okay. Whatever you might miss is recorded. You can flip back and get it. Now, we've talked about the data warehouse concept, and we went through the 4 workshops, and 2 of those we had 2 databases, okay, that were Access 1 and 4, Access Workshop 1 and 4, and then we had the sandwich between them, Access Workshop 2 and 3, where we exported some files, okay? And the warehouse concept is a simple one. A data warehouse can be one of the following: a set of 2 or more databases connected together somehow, or it can be a single database in which you utilize multiple queries operating off of dimensions. And you remember, as we came in, we started the class, I talked about that notion of an analytical cube. And the analytical cube are 2 things: the dimensions, i.e. attributes, i.e. variables, i.e. characteristics, and then facts, data that I can add, subtract, count, etc. Okay? So you have those 2, and that's why when we had that data warehouse sales database that was really using a series of fact tables. The first database we worked with had a fact table, but we were primarily working with dimensions. And in fact, the author at Rockoff in that text was old school, and he would name the tables to understand dimensions. This is important for it's important that you see this and get it, because a database is designed to allow you to collect, save, and extract data about 2 things. 1, characteristics, attributes, and 2, some type of transaction or event that occurs. That's what they're designed to do. Now, you notice that we had a couple of times when we worked with the Rockoff text, and that's the one that's the blue one, the data analysis access, and we had a whole chapter where we talked about using pivot tables, okay? And the whole point was, you're often going to find that you'll have to take data out of a database and extract it and then throw it into an application where you can do the kind of number crunching that you may need to do. Now, we have some very simplistic examples, but when you start talking 500,000 or 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 pieces of data, you'll be thankful that you had enough Excel that you learned how to do drag and drop, and you'll be thankful that you understand how to use pivot table, because out in practice, that's typically what occurs unless your company has purchased SAS Visual Analytics or SAP's program, or maybe Oracle's program, where they kind of give you the combination of a database and a spreadsheet, okay? So this is important for you to understand, because if you don't understand why you have a company database, then you're kind of lost. And if you don't understand why you have an analytical engine or spreadsheet engine, you're kind of lost too, because the spreadsheets are designed to not only let me look at what happened but it's also designed to let me look at what's happening now, and to most importantly, and we go through this over and over again in management science, how to make some predictions or to optimize given the constraints I operate with. Well, here we're working with we're back in a data warehouse situation, and we have several kinds of dimension tables. Now, I want to open up the alphabet for just a second. Let's open it up and look at it, okay? And you'll see these are just letters, okay? This is a dimension table. It's a constant of letters, and you're going to find a constant of numbers. You'll find, we'll look at dual, okay? This is a dummy column that's set up, so if you might want to recreate some columns, you can do so. Again, that's a dimension. Then we have a table called constants, And this is one like the business name, the business start date, and a lunch budget, and the owner name. And these are what we call, this would be what we would call a slowly changing dimension table, because it's lists of customers. In other words, this isn't going to change all that much rapidly. We'll add to it, but rarely will we do much editing. Okay. Now, this is important for you to understand for a simple reason. You'll be able to communicate with the people in your IT department, and more importantly, you'll have a better handle on what's going on with your business. Now, I can tell you from a lot of experience that two things are operative anytime I work with a client with their strategic planning, and that is, one, they usually don't know what business they're in, and number two, they really don't know who their competitors are. They might have some ideas about it, but they don't really have that grasp because they missed an understanding of a business, okay, engages certain people or certain other entities in a certain way, and that generates transactions, economic transactions of some kind. So if you don't know who your customers are, you can't even begin to explain why. And a database thought process, you start to say, okay, what is it that I need to know? Because from there, everything else flows in terms of the data that you collect. And if you collect data that you don't need, you're wasting time and you're wasting money. Well, we've got that warehouse approach here. And if you scroll down, you'll see we have all these tables that we're going to be working with. And then you'll come down and you'll see you'll see a form. And we've talked about what those are. And then a report. And you see even a few queries here. Okay? So this is one database used like a warehouse. Okay? And a warehouse is a process where I go in and I get the stuff I need. So that's really about all we're going to do. And what we've been doing here is we're just building along. And this time over in chapter 3, we're going to use a compound condition. Okay? And we've been doing some conditional statements where the ID equals this or the last name is this, whatever. Now we're going to enhance that by adding compound conditions. And let's go over now, and you ought to have the SQL database open, all right? And then let's go over to the code. And as I said before, he will always have the code open for specific chapters, and we're going to look at number 3. Now, what I try to do is give you a flavor of each of these. Now, the authors have aimed this book at two kinds of critters. One, folks like you and me who are going to be end users, okay? And the other are people who are who are computer science types or database administrators. So he walks you through every conceivable type of query. He'll even repeat them. So what I try to do is give you a flavor of them so you kind of get what's going on. Now, the benefit of that is that when you go out there, when you see a transaction occur, you'll ask yourself, how and why did this happen? Or you'll ask yourself, why do I have the clients that I have? Who are they? That's the whole point of this, is to get you thinking about that. Because sooner or later what will happen is you'll start to get reports, and they won't have much relevance for you in terms of your application or their meaning for you out in the business. And when you've hit that point, that's the time you've got to do some rethinking. And I can guarantee you, I can go to any company, look at their database, and I can tell you a whole lot about how data flows. And typically, data is very sticky stuff. With data flows typically money, okay? Typically goods and services. So let's look at this very first one, and I've got it up here on the screen, and this is 3.1, okay? And we're going to look at this for just a moment. Now, what's going on here? Well, we've got a typical select statement, and we got the fields we're going to select, and then the table we're going to get them from. No big deal so far. Then, where not, we're going to use the where not clause. We want to exclude anybody who has a manager with the ID of 203. Or, and this is the additive, the manager is null. Okay? That's a compound clause. And we'll click on that. Now, in the old days when we programmed something like this, trust me, it was an adventure because you'd have a map of literally the physical memory, and you'd be playing all kinds of games. That we'll click create, and then we're going to click query design and go, boy, this is all, yeah. But actually, you understand more about databases and you understand more about how they use them than 99% of the people that you'll work for or with. And that's a good thing because they are everything. If you don't think they're important, if you look at the situation that's gone on in Florida, that terrible tragedy, here was a nursing home full of people who were very vulnerable. And because somebody didn't put them into the state's database, 8 people died. Somebody just didn't put the data in. They missed it. Now, you'd think that if people were there across the street from a hospital, they'd have enough sense to go and go across the hospital and go, hey, I got a bunch of old people over here. And they shouldn't be out in the heat for 5 days. Didn't happen. But again, there were 10,000 people in the Florida Keys who decided to ride out the storm. And now they're mad because they can't get in. People are people, are what they are. But that was a mistake with the database. Boom. Wrong person. All these things that we do right now, which is very much under the radar for the public, especially our use of things like drones, where we go find bad people. They get the wrong GPS coordinates, innocent people get killed. Probably happens far more than we know. And again, this is just an issue of trying to make sure we use these things and use these tools properly. Well, this is 3.1, and we have everybody who meets those 2 conditions. So we're going to save it as 3.1. Okay. So we've done the or not, and we'll go back down. Let's look at the design view. Now, in here you have 3 views: the code, the design, and the data sheet. You and I typically as end users are only going to see this and the data sheet. We typically won't see the code, all right? But you get to see the code below because in this situation you get to see everything that a database administrator has to do, okay? And so when you think about what we talked about, creating tables and how they're designed and what has to go into them, then it should make you thoughtful in terms of get the data that I need, use the data that I need, and however I can automate that process, the better off I am. Okay, so we've got this code, we've got this query, and we'll just take a look at it real quickly. And here it is. We're using that Boolean logic that is not equal to 203 or is null. You say, why do you want to find the null ones? Because null is the bane of our existence. I don't know, for example, if employee 206 is the manager or we just forgot to input the data that day. Okay? And let me say this, I don't envy you because you're going to inherit folks who will come to work for you who think showing up for work is kind of a difficult thing. Turning in their work when it's due is, well, I had stuff to do. And you're going to get them best of luck. May God go with you, because you'll experience it, and you know, who knows what you're going to. Hopefully, it won't be that bad. But I have people tell me all the time out there, what does it look like? And they tell me it ain't good. I can't get my employees to show up. They steal from me. They don't do their work when they're there. They're irresponsible. So, yeah. And at the same time, we're competing with every large continent nations in the world, and they're open for business. Okay, so we've got that 301, and that gives you, and that was over there on page 87. So you'll want to save that as 3.1. Okay, we've done that one. Now, over in page 89, he gives us another version of this. 3.2, where he's using the not within condition. Okay, and before we run it, let's just, if you've got your book, you ought to have it open with you. Notice we've got the select statement, the standard select statement. Then we begin to put in the where clause, and where the department code is not in, so we're going to exclude accounting and marketing. And you say, oh, I see, this is not that hard. No, it's not. Last name is not between J&M, so we'll exclude them. And last name is not, and this is using an Oracle, that little dollar, that little percentage sign, as opposed to the asterisk, which they show you, which is what Access uses. And that's just because they use a couple of different types of engines underneath the hood. And manager is not null. So let's take a look at the code there that he has for us. All right. And looks like, I think we've got the, and he left out the Oracle. Good. And this is just one version. And again, this is just, we're building these things as we go along. And we're just, and what's happening as we do this is the more complex these queries get, the more we slice and dice the data. And the more we get a picture. Up, my fault. I need to put the select in. There we go. Okay. And then there's the design view. And we're good. Now, just to kind of, just as a habit, it's probably not a bad idea. And this is 3.2, so you can save it as that. In fact, I'm going to save it as 3-2 version 1. And we're good. It should be 3-2. My apologies. 3-2 version. Now, you say you're kind of matter of fact about this and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I am, because frankly, this is the easy part, okay? The hard part is when you have to write one of these when you have a business case, which is why at the end of the course, if you look through these chapters, you're going to see these little things called check your understanding. I'm going to ask you to take those little business problems or business cases to check your understandings and write some code write some code. Now, luckily, they're embedded in, they're embedded between examples and things, so you can do that, and people survived it, so it shouldn't be a problem. But again, we're back up here at this level, and we're slicing and dicing the data just a little more. And we start, and we'll go back here to the code, and we exclude anybody who's in accounting or marketing. The last name, and their last name is not like an S, and the manager ID is not known. Let's look at that. And we'll go back up to the data set, and there we are. Now, what will happen is that typically your boss will say, here's the data set. Could you get me all of the sales during the month of August for whatever zip code or whatever region, etc. And well, and once you do it, you're probably going to have a set of routine queries that you run. Now, again, you'll be typically working at the GUI level, okay, or at the design level. It just depends upon whatever product you're working as, and we're able to do this using drag and drop. When you do the SAS visual analytics exercise I've got for you, you'll see exactly what I mean, because you'll see that they'll have tables for you and ways to extract the data and do what you're going to do with them. And I'll have some tasks for you. And what you'll find out is once you kind of see this, you can work with just about any kind of database software that's out there, because you don't have to do the programming. It's designed to give us all of those, including like a toolbar that will tell us up here, yeah, you're running a select query. Okay, so not a big deal there. And then they go and they kind of move us into a little bit more complex clause, and that's over on page 91. Okay, and we'll move that, and that's over on 3.3. Okay, now the first part of this is the algorithm. We're going to select the employee ID, the first name, last name from the employees. That's the first piece of the secret sauce. Boom. You see that repeated over and over, because those are dimensions that we're after, but we want to slice and dice through those dimensions so we can get the information. Now, we're going to, where the manager ID is null, okay, and this is part of that clause, compound clause, the first name equals Susan, and that's a hard code in, and the credit limit equals 30, and then we have another set of conditions, and then another set of conditions, and another set of conditions. The reason that we have the ability to take somebody who visits a website, okay, and embed a cookie on their machine and find out everything about them is because that little cookie is essentially a query builder, or that will just simply track and starts to match things up, okay? And so, and then if you go to any of the, well, you go Amazon, probably the best example. They start tracking your purchases, what you pay with, etc. And really, if you went underneath and looked at the code and they have a bot agent that records all of that, the algorithm, and that what you really do is you fill out their form for them. You'll see all these conditions, okay? It'd be probably 100 conditions. And that starts to give you that picture of that person and what they are, what they purchased, and that type of thing. So we're looking at select employee ID, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 conditional sets. And so let's go ahead and copy that, and then we'll throw it into a fresh query. So we'll click create, query design, and no big deal, nothing with that. And then we'll pop that in. I think I got it over there, and we'll run it. And there we are. Now, I want you to notice something. The more complex that query becomes, the smaller the data becomes. This is an extraction process, okay? And when we extract stuff, typically we end up with far less than we would need. I can't remember, I read it somewhere, but they were talking about when they made the first atomic bomb. And of course, they utilized plutonium. And I don't know how many hundreds of millions of tons of material they had to process to get down to enough that they could put in the 2 bombs. I think they call it Fat Man and Little Boy. And they had enormous facilities there in the Tennessee Valley to extract all of that, okay? And so you'll notice the more complex a query gets, typically, the more condensed the information is, because we put all these conditions on it, okay? So we've done this, and if you look under it, seemingly it looks like there's not a lot going on there, but if you look below, you'll see all of the conditional statements that were written or are included in that query to get that data. So that's 3.3, okay? Once you start to see that, excuse me, you start to say, oh, okay. Now I know why I don't want to waste my time collecting data I don't need, and why I want to store data in the proper way, etc. Okay? So we've done 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and sometimes it's just easiest for me to just walk us through this. And over on page 93, for example, he shows you a common mistake, okay, where you have the parentheses missing, okay? And then at the bottom of 93, he walks you through how people can often misunderstand that set of code, okay? And it gives you the results set at the top of 94. That's a little arcane, but what he's trying to do is to get you to understand how the computer sees the code. That's what he's talking about there in the middle of page 94, and the result that the computer produces, okay? And he's trying to emphasize to us the notion of garbage in, garbage out, okay? You can put data in there all day long and get result sets. They may be nothing. They may be of no value. For example, if you run a query and you've got everything right except the zip code, okay, then what you have is a whole set of data that's irrelevant, really is invalid, isn't worth anything because it's about the wrong zip code or maybe the wrong customer type, whatever. Now, the levels of complexity of this get more and more as you deal with a greater number of customers and a greater number of products. And this database here, okay, this warehouse, which is really what it is, larger companies will have hundreds of these, dozens. Really big companies will have thousands of them. Okay, and they will take one of two approaches. They'll either have a data warehouse, okay, that you can try to pull everything about everybody from, or they may just simply have warehouses for sets of customers. Banking and financial institutions tend to work on a risk management basis, so they tend to slot customers on the basis of risk, and they'll run queries. Capital One is probably the ones who pioneered this, but they do, I don't know, 10,000 experiments a year to say, okay, if so-and-so who fits this particular credit profile, this income, blah, 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 if we gave them, if we upped their credit limit to $200 more, what would happen? To see. And if it says, hey, looks like you might be good, then you get a little thing through the mail, or you get an email, or however they contact you, and they'll say, hey, would you raise your credit limit? Would you like, congratulations, we've just raised your credit limit. Walmart does that a lot, a whole lot. And it's interesting, I like to watch this to see that process as it goes through. And being on the end of it and kind of understand where they're coming from. When I get something like that, I go, oh, okay, well, things are the lifespan of the bills, things are going along well. Okay, so that's 3.3, and over on page 96. Okay, I'd like you to take a look at the constant value, and that's, again, you really do need to have the book with you so you could see, because what he shows you there is the beginning table, and then the use of literals. Okay, literals are hard-coded data that you use as a descriptor or some kind of flag or message. Now notice what's going on there. He's got a beginning table, okay? He shows you the flow of it, and then he combined, and he's got some new columns coded as constant values, so he adds some constants, okay? He combines the two of them together, and he gets a result set. And we're gonna see that over on 3.5. So let's open up our file, the text file. You say, what did you mean by the hard code? Well, there it is. Excellent worker as evaluation, 10 as rating, okay? 01 January 12 as evaluation date. And I think we're going to run into a problem there because it may want us to use pound signs. Let's see what happens. So that's 3.5. It's over on page 95. So we're going to copy that, and we'll click create. And we'll go back down to the, we'll close it off. We'll go to the SQL view, and we go. Now, let's see if it plays nice with us. May not. Oh, it did. Very good. Okay. Now, what we've done here, okay, is we've combined a literal as, i.e., a constant, and that is excellent worker. Then we've added in another constant, okay, and that's their evaluation date. A constant, another example might be if we run everybody from the state of Oklahoma or everybody from zip code 74804. We hard code this, so we make that selection in. Now, we'll go back down. This is going to be 3.6, okay? So we'll save it as such. Yeah, not 3.26, but 3.6. Now let's go back down for a second and go down to the SQL view. Really, well, we can pop it up. We can see a little bit better here. Excellent worker, 10 as a rating. And notice what's going on here. They use a column alias as evaluation. That's a column alias. As rating, there's another column alias. As evaluation date. And then null as next evaluation. Now, they're using column aliases. You say, why? Number one might be, I want to ensure that if my data get out the door, that somebody really does not know the names of my fields. It's bad enough if they know the names of my tables, but if they know the names of the fields in my table, they can fish around, and if I get an attack, they can get all my data. Now, for all the stuff that you've heard out there about all the hackers and all that, simple human idiocy is the cause of about 9% of data breaches. Somebody takes data home they shouldn't. Somebody uses a machine in an environment they shouldn't. That's about 90% of it, okay? Then other people who are very, very creative are the ones who focus on cracking the really tough systems to get into those. And they'll use what's called an SQL injection, and that is they'll find a way to get a password or sneak in the back door, and then they'll begin to run, they'll attempt to run queries so they can identify a table or fields in a table, and once they do, they've hit pay dirt because everything typically is all connected. So it's usually pretty common to utilize those types, to use column aliases, especially if you're putting in some sensitive data or you're using some constant type of data. So we've done 3.6 where that, and we've kind of just taken that, we've taken that down. Now, so we'll go ahead and save that as 3.6, okay? And now, if you look over on page 99, okay, there's some more information. They walk you through the mechanics of all this. Again, this is about more than you just running some queries and getting a grade. This is about a thought process. What you should always be doing is asking yourself who, what, where, when, and why. Very simple questions. If you do, you're thinking like a business owner or somebody who owns a business wants their people to think. Why do people make this purchase at this time, this particular purchase? Why does it seem that everybody who trades with us uses a particular set of credit cards? Or why is it everybody that trades with it uses debit cards? Why don't we have any people using credit cards? Okay, or what's the mix and balance of cash versus credit cards versus debit cards? And it will tell you a lot about the people who trade with you. Okay, why? How long do people stay at my website? Where do they click? Why? How long are they after they click a particular link? And how long does it take people to make a purchase? All of those questions, how, when, what, where, why, we can catalog those in one way or the other, particularly today with so much digital, with everything so digitized, we have trails, we have breadcrumbs where we can follow all that, okay? Give you a really good, an interesting example back in the bombing in Oklahoma City, how they found the people who did it, and they found them within hours, was they just happened to find an axle from the truck, and that axle's manufacturing number was on there, and the FBI started contacting all the manufacturers, and they found the truck. Once they found the truck, they began going to all the rental places. They found who rented the truck. Now, we got lucky because the officer happened to stop, I think the guy's name was McVeigh, out on the highway for some minor infraction, but they knew who was involved within hours. Today, when you think about, like you look at the thing in Boston that happened, and they had people on social media, they found those people and got to them within hours. it's all these breadcrumbs are out here that enable us, if we want to do good things, to find people and to make sales, etc., or predict what they might want and all that business. So that's really the value of what's going on there. And the nice thing about it is that the value of all this information, whatever might be in here, it's valuable today, it's valuable yesterday, it's valuable tomorrow. It's valuable to the extent that I have the brains to use it and use it effectively and collect it and extract it well. Now, there on pages 100 and 101, they walk you through the code, the beginning table, and then the second beginning table and the result. So so that's just that process where we're always pulling down, we're extracting information, okay, so we can understand what's going on with their business. Now, I'm going to close this off for just a moment, and I'm going to go back up here to the modules area, okay, and we'll work with our files. And I always like to make sure that you kind of get a sense of what this is all about. So I'm going to open up the course resources and let you take a look at that. Okay, these people, all right, this is a database. Now, pretty soon it's about to become a broadcasting corporation because, well, it already is. They're doing Facebook Live, but Facebook originally started with, let's make a place where people can meet each other and talk and communicate and all this, and we'll let them share stuff about their lives. And really what that was is a database. And then from that has come this business of live Facebook, etc., advertising. Twitter is nothing more than 140 messages. It's nothing more than really a very primitive chat device with some embellishments on top of it to make it look kind of cool. But Twitter, what are they worth? But now they're moving themselves to a point where they catalog everything, so if they want, you can go in and scrape Twitter and find out what's going on. What are people saying about our company? So they're databases. We use so many databases, it's unbelievable. But again, it's seeing, pardon me, it's seeing that process of how we extract the data. Well, I'm going to close that back down. Let's move on through. You say, oh, this is kind of boring. I hope it is. I hope you're not on the edge of your seat about to die, because if you are, you know, you need to, because, and the thing is, this is not that difficult. The beauty of this environment, and I'll take this back here to design, to the design view. You see, all of you, about half of you sit here going, yeah. But listen, for a lot of people, this would be a wild ride because they don't have the backgrounds you have. And that's the advantage that you're going to have is when you go out to work, that you can understand what you can do with these tools and how they can help you. Spreadsheets and databases have changed business forever. With a spreadsheet, I can take a spreadsheet and I can simulate cash flow analysis thousands of times and come back to a potential client and say, here's what it looks like. Here are the likely outcomes. With this, I can find people. I can identify customers. I can follow transactions. Now, there's some privacy concerns involved with this as well, okay? And there's always the human element. Always the human element. But if you see this and understand it, you're gold. I don't know how many times I have students who will send me an email and go, if I could not have honestly said this to a potential employer, I've worked with SQL. I've worked some with Oracle. I understand what that's about. I've done some work with SAP. I've done some work with SAS. I don't know how many times somebody will say employer lights up, because mostly everybody's learning about spreadsheets, which is wonderful. But these are the really powerful tools, because spreadsheets don't do what this does. this does what it does quite well, just like spreadsheets do what they do. Okay, let's take a look over, and they talk about some about punctuation and some of that business and some of the problems you can get around, and the semicolon and using double quotes and all that business. Okay, and then they give you some more information about punctuation, spaces, how to handle them, dates, things of that nature. And those are things that typically, you know, you'll run into them and you'll be running back to look at the book to deal with them. So let's pop over to, they talk, well, there in chapter 3 is a lot of this case sensitivity. Okay, we want things to be case sensitive. And over on page 118, they talk about case sensitivity and access, and they give you that little query 313. So let's pop over there to 313. As I said, you know, I'm going to try to spare you of all the repetition of let's do that. Now, let's talk about this for just a moment. What are we going to get? What are we selecting? Can somebody tell me? Okay. Wow. Okay, we're getting it from that table, but what are we getting out of the table? What's the asterisk all about? Okay, but there's something else that we're selecting from that table. What is it? What does the asterisk tell me after the select statement? I want everything. It's a wild card. Okay, so we're using that as shorthand. If you had 500, that's the beauty of this. One of the beautiful things about mathematics and that as a language is the more complex it becomes, the more simpler it becomes. Think of this: E equals mc squared. Energy equals what? Matter times velocity squared. How simple, how beautiful, but all the complexities behind it that Einstein had to work his way through are incredible. You'd fill this room with all the writing. Boom. Look what we're saying there, select. The asterisk says select everything from that table. Okay. Then, is that all there is? No. Then we have a conditional statement where we're going to get the name, where name 1 equals name 2, and then we're going to order it by row ID. So let's go ahead and copy that, and we'll put it into a fresh query. Now this is boring until the day you're out at work and your boss says, I need a report on, and you go talk to the people IT so they get you set up with your dashboard and blah, 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 blah. And you won't have to be one of the people who have that sickening feeling going, oh, I don't know how to do this. Okay. You will be prepared to deal with that situation. And trust me, you'll have employers who want that. And as you move further up, what will happen is you'll move from if you're particularly in larger firms, as you move upwards, what will happen is rather than running queries, you'll engage in discussions. Well, I think everybody that buys our car is so we should use this ad agency. And then somebody in the room who has some sanity will go, why don't we go collect some data and see? And hopefully you'll be that one. Otherwise, you know, you'll end up selling you'll end up trying to sell your vehicle to the wrong people. Okay. My wife is a fanatic around the St. Louis Cardinals. I'm a fan too, but not like her. Okay, and we watch the games, and the games have the same commercials over and over and over because we get a lot of the St. Louis commercials through Cox. And she said, why do they run the same commercial over and over and over? I said, because the people who watch this are the same people who buy that product. somebody had to have it in a database, and somebody had to do the analytics to figure that out. It's hard for you to understand, particularly if you're an athlete where you've been rewarded, you win or lose on the physicality. Okay, that's one thing. It's another thing when you move into the realm where you win or lose on the basis of your brains, your ability to take some information and do something with it, or see or have an insight. Okay, that's a whole different critter. Okay, and just like with sports teams, companies that are successful and are around a long time, let's take an IBM, for example, are people who make great halftime adjustments. IBM has made halftime adjustments. They've understood what's going on and said, we need to change things. Oracle is another one of those companies. Procter & Gamble is another one of those companies. You can take those long-standing companies, and what they have the ability to do is to change when they're coming to an inflection point. Well, we've got this query, and we're going to call this 313. And notice what we've got. We have that in all the different case sensitivities. So we'll call it 313. Again, we're just doing we're showing you all the different ways we can put it into a case sensitive. Three-valued logic. Okay. If you take a look, if you got the book, which you should have with you, because you miss about 9% of what's important if you don't. Page 121. Okay. Now here the authors talk about three-valued logic. Now this is where we start to get some real value, because we start running multiple queries, not just one. And notice what we got going on here. We're going to select from the foods table. The price increases is more than 20 cents. We're going to order it. Okay. Then we're going to have the next query. We're going to where the price increase is not that. And then we're going to show the rows where the truth of the statement is unknown. We don't know what it is. So we got three things we're going to accomplish. The first is the price was increased by 20 cents. The other is the price, it wasn't increased by 20 cents. And then the third is we don't know. Why would it matter? It might be that we're in a pricing war with a competitor, okay? And that might be the 20 cents is an inflection point. Yeah. I went to the store the other day. I'm looking for tomato soup, okay? How many of you know that there's 10,000 kinds of tomato soup? There's really, I don't know how many actually. But I looked, and here's Campbell's soup. Campbell's soup is $2.69. The house brand, Great Value, is 50 cents. Now, which soup do you think I'm going to buy? I'm going to buy the 50-cent soup. And unless I find a cootie in it, or it makes me sick, or it stinks, I'm buying it for the rest of my life. Because Campbell's is good, but it ain't that good. Unless they send me an email and say, we have some whiskey in it, Dr. Herman, I'm out of Campbell's. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Campbell's. All right, my friends. So we see that set of multiple queries, and we have the beginning table, and then those result tables, and three of them. Okay? So now we've started to move from doing a singular query to a multiple query. Okay, now, I'm not going to beat you up by having you run all three of those, but I do want you to look at those. And I would assume that at this point, you probably can understand what we're doing. If the price is greater than 20, okay, it's not greater than 20 cents, the increase, or we don't know. And the one we don't know might be the most important. But we've run three queries there, and that again is the kind of slice and dice that we do to get those categories. So if you look at the results set, you've got those tables. Now, the next piece for you is this, all right? Analyzing it. The extraction process is one thing. The next would be to say, okay, here's the result table at the bottom of 121. Here's the result table of 122. Here's the result table in 122 at the top. Is there a pattern? Is there something I need to see? Is there something I don't understand? Then you're on your way to being a more analytical and better company. Well, they give you some business there about error code messages, and what the book tells you is what you've already understood, is that you'll get an error message and it can't help you at all. So we'll just move on from that. And the truth is just there's no point. And he gives you over here on page 124, 125, he gives you a bunch of incorrect queries, a first attempt and a second attempt, okay, and then the correction. Okay, and it usually involves some punctuation or something of that nature. Let's walk you through those, and those are kind of helpful if you're actually. Those may come in handy when you do some of those check your understandings. Then he'll show the incorrect and the incorrect. And what he's also telling you are some of the typical kinds of mistakes that people make. So you'll want to kind of pay attention to that and take a look at it for just a minute. He does the same thing with exercise 318, okay? And there at the page 131, he gives you kind of a summary of the chapter and that why we use compound conditions, okay? And really what we're doing when we use compound conditions is we're extracting rows and combining them. Now, by the end of the course, we're going to be combining tables upon tables upon tables, and that's when the fun begins and when our proficiency gets pretty good. So you'll want to save this to your desktop, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to click Save As, database, and close all of them. And I'm going to save it as SQL Fun, and I'm going to put LD3 because it's Lunches Database 3, and put it on the desktop, and then upload it. Okay, so you've done LD3. That's going to be due coming up here at a certain point in time. Again, the big takeaways, we're working with it. We're working with the data warehouse now in one database, and we're running all kinds of queries, and we're learning. We did some simple queries, and now we've used some compound clauses to get multiple result sets, either within a row or sets of rows. And then over on page 4, chapter 4, he talks about some stuff, and I'm just going to kind of give us, we won't do chapter 4, obviously we don't have time, but I want to talk about it for just a moment. As I said to you before, 2 things have made this, other than spreadsheets, the most powerful tool that you have. One of them is the advent of object-oriented programming. When I can go in and I can go to design view and I can drag and I can click and a table appears, okay? I'm looking at a picture. Underlying it is thousands and thousands of lines of code. I don't know how many people Microsoft has working on Access. I think together with the Office suite, they've probably got 25 or 30,000 people that work on that all the time. That's all they do. That's why it looks so easy. Okay. Now the underlying code, so that you and I can just drag and drop and see icons and understand them, okay, is a marvelous thing. So object-oriented programming really changed everything. The other was when we were able to free ourselves of having to actually work with the architecture in a machine, okay? For example, in the old days, when you did a database, you stored data, you stored it physically, okay? And then when you ran a query, that data got stored physically. And as you can guess, things got pretty crowded. And that's why they decided, hey, can we find a way to have an icon represent things so that we can store things, but just store the code, not the data, or write pointers, have to say go. In the old days when you did database, just to run some of these queries was probably 600-700 lines of code, okay? And it would take forever to run it. If you want to get a sense of how fast things have changed in the world, okay, in the early 1950s, the first bank in the United States to really engage in multinational banking was Citibank. And how they did it was they had college students who would sit on the phone. And we had the first transatlantic cable, and we had the first trans-Caribbean cable, a big cable that could carry phone conversations. And they'd pay college students to sit on the thing and keep it open so somebody could come and go, hey, I have a requested check from blah, 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 blah. Do they have money in their account, yes or no? Oh, yeah, they're good. They have so much. Okay, fine. That's how they did international banking. Today, we move stuff around digitally. That's how fast this has all changed. And who knows how fast it will be for you. But I guarantee you, it will be quick. So this business about understanding tables or views, the power of this is that when I'm working here, I'm just saving the code. So I have unless I have the power, the authority to go in and change the table, I'm working the code. So I'm taking a picture and I can Photoshop that picture all I want. I have the same picture, but I've just Photoshopped it 1,000 times, 5,000 times. That's why, one of the things that's of great interest to me is intellectual capital, because it has infinite value. When probably the most famous movie is Gone with the Wind. The first time it was aired on television, more people saw it than had seen it ever. That's pretty astounding, isn't it? And think how much money that was worth. And Ted Turner, if you've ever heard of him, was smart enough to go out to Hollywood when the big production studios were all disintegrating and say, look, I know you're in trouble, so let me have your catalog from Warner Brothers. Give me all your films between. I'm like, and throwing a lot of stuff. I bought all the stuff from Jimmy Cagney, and I need Jimmy Stewart. Oh yeah, I definitely want that thing about Christmas. I want that one. And they had a fire sale. And then he has a network now, 2 networks really, and they show movies. And the cable people pay them to show those old movies. They're 50, 60, 78 years old. Silent movies. And what you guys now, if you go out to if you watch movies now, what you get is a steady dose of animation. Why? Animated characters don't talk back. They don't go in the union. They don't ask for a trailer. They don't get $1 million a picture. They do their job. Isn't that nice for you? How wonderful. Every now and then you'll get a picture that has actual people in it with a real story. Avoid those at all costs. I'm just teasing. Okay, my friends, I think we covered a lot of ground today. We will, and you'll want to upload that from Lunch's database for LD3, and we'll look at 4. And we'll do 4 on Tuesday, and I might even move faster than that. Thank you so much for being here, and those of you who are out there, we've got 3 of us here. Glad to see you, Grant and Jared. Thank you very much. Any questions? Anyone? How do I drop or add? It's too late. Too bad. Then, of course, my question to you is that when I was asking was, what is that? Why are you people still in my lab? Have a good one. Have a nice weekend. Guys, thanks a lot. Jared, take care. Yeah, sure.